players, and it became a first-person shooter game. What we were doing since the in 2000, I had a Sega Genesis game in our pickup truck, and we would go in the back and we would be shooting zombies. That was in 2000. That was before Resident Evil movie came out, before 28 Days Later, and that was the turning point because it also made the zombie genre more accessible to younger people. Because the younger people were playing video games and allowed them to shoot the zombies. And that really was the turning point to sort of reinvigorating the zombie genre from George's movies into the early 2000s as well. Is there a bunch of little daddies right now?
I thought because you guys were behind the scenes, no, I don't know. I signed up for 2 additional movies at the time, so I have no idea where Big Daddy went. I was hoping Big Daddy would appear in somebody's show, kicking somebody's ass. Like, okay, I'll tell you what I really wanted to do. You guys had, what's the character? Yeah. I wanted to go, maybe not as Big Daddy, I wanted to come as an intelligent zombie, and just every now and then just jacking his ass off. Don't kill him because people love him, but every now and then I wanted to have like a zombie just kick somebody's ass, and look at them, and suck their ass off, but you never knew when he was going to come in and mess somebody up. You know what I mean? Like, no, you've gone too far. Yeah, I'm always on your ass, right? So, but that's a great question. I have no idea. If they ever do that, I'd love to do it, but I'd love to do it within the next 10 years. Because after that, actually, you know what? I don't want to play something, man. You know, ultimately, yeah. I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe they know.
With all the big names, that's how it is. Who's the biggest jokester and some of the most memorable gags in this place?
For sure.
Played in the theater.
There was no gangsters. There were no gangsters. No one played tricks when I was around.
So you mean to tell me when John Wick was on and everybody in the case?
John Wick was on?
And nobody messed around and like joke around when everybody was all serious and stuff? I mean, nobody...
I don't really remember anything that was funny. John may have been humorous in the trailer a little bit, but the set work was not funny. I mean, we were busy. There wasn't a lot of laughing.
It was winter.
Yeah, it was rough.
Like really winter. You could die, right? No, really. And then we shot at night. I remember one night I was exhausted. Just back to sleep. And John said, coffee, lots of coffee.
I'm sure if I go back and look at old night video footage, because we shot some, we would always shoot tests and stuff. We had some fun. But, you know, like I said yesterday, you know, there was a lot of pressure on the board. So it wasn't the most happy-go-lucky set. Like, it was pressure and then it was down. But was also an exciting time. I think the crazy thing that I remember about the night shooting was we were always shooting outside the trailer. And we were all living in a separate place. So when you wrap at 5 o'clock in the morning, clean everybody up, and you would be stuck in traffic on the way into Toronto with it would take 2 hours. You go to work at 4 in the afternoon, start shooting at 7 at night, wrap at 5 in the morning, and then you get in traffic, you sit for 2 hours. So you go from 4 in the afternoon to 9 o'clock the next morning. That was fucking brutal. The sun, and you're just like right in the car.
I'm freaking out
Yeah,
just
that
saying
was-
that. Oh my God, I can't remember.
That was kind of horrible.
It was rough. When you're exhausted and you're in traffic, it sucks to drive in traffic anyway. Just put 15 hours of work in front of it. Yeah, it was rough.
I think the fun part was always us walking into the lobby of the hotel covered in fake blood while everybody would be sitting there having breakfast. Remember the restaurant was right to the right? And we become like, we just look like we serial killer murdered people. And we would just walk through, get in the elevator like this woman would be coming in, all ready for breakfast, and she's in to meet Gina.
There's one thing that it's not funny. It wasn't funny then, but it's funny now. Is at the end, I used to be so emotionally messed up that I would go to friends' houses. Like I just wanted to hug. And what's wrong? And they go, well, because my nickname in UCLA where I play football was Big Daddy. I'm a black man, the best of Big Daddy. So I go and they go, oh, we're getting there, aren't you? I'm going, man, I'm kind of jacked up inside. The girls go, oh, no, I'm okay. I'm like, you know what, when you're big, you're not supposed to have any damn feelings. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, suck it up. Suck what up? Shit. The special effects makeup was so, now, I thought this one time, was never done. It was so authentic. They both warned me. You can't hide behind this makeup. Whatever you're thinking and feeling, they can see. And when Gino finished making me up, I looked at him and was like, God! Damn! I didn't want to be mean in the alley like that. So, and the contacts hurt so bad. For the longest, I had to have my hand on somebody to lead me into the thing, onto the set. I felt that. It's like, you know what? I'm this big black guy walking with these contacts and I can't see this shit. And I'm supposed to be like, oh. But no, it wasn't. We watched it again. We're in the water. This was funny for somebody, God damn it. It was so cold. I had a wetsuit. Every muscle in my body was jumping. If you see that look on my face, I was not acting. I was pissed.
But however, that was day one of shooting. We did inserts because the idea was when Big Daddy's head comes up out of the water, that was Apocalypse Now. That was George's homage to Apocalypse Now. We set up a swimming pool on stage that was needed, which I shot because I was the second unit director on the movie. And we'd been outside, freezing our asses off, and then one day we're like, oh, we gotta shoot pickups of all the zombies, and we had to put the contact because we needed to see their eyes. We're like, they might float away. If you open your eyes underwater, it's a very good chance that you're gonna come out and your eye, the lenses will be gone, and they cost $1,000 a set. So we had to be really careful with you. We actually, remember this, we made a fake head of Eugene with the eyes open because we didn't even know if he would be able to raise his head out of the water without blinking. Because the idea is zombies don't blink. They don't have condensation in their mouths, and they don't blink because the water doesn't blink because you're re-moistening your eyes. Zombies are dead. So that was one thing George and I talked about, and we made a fake head. We put it in the water, and it was a backup plane. The backup plane is a fake head of Eugene. To have it come out of the water, but then I'm like, hey, fuck it, we're here. Let's try it. We're gonna do it anyway. We just have to, and I remember saying to Gino, like, just be ready, guys. Those contact lenses might be floating around in the pool. We gotta make sure that we get it. And we got it. The shot was magnificent. George was so excited because when we shot the first time, we were in the wave pool outside of Toronto with 200 extras. And that was literally our fucking first night of shooting. All the zombies are coming up and walking out of the water. So we remember that.
Greg remembers every detail of everything. It's amazing. But that night where we were outside in the wave pool, Eugene and a bunch of background, I mean, he did a great job. But people were literally quitting on the spot. Going, you can't do this.
Because they didn't have wetsuits.
You can't do this. It's just too much. 30-degree water.
If your background and this water, you gotta equip yourself. Get a wetsuit. Bring a wetsuit. I have one on. Every once in a while, jumping, but I wasn't getting out the water. There's one thing. You on the set, being prepared, you want to make sure that you're not the one messing up. You want to make sure that you get one take or two takes, because that means they can call you again sometime, right? But in the water, it's so freezing and just it was cold, so people jumped out.
Yeah, some of the background that were behind him, like the extras and stuff, they would do a couple takes and just put their hand up like, can't do it. Like I'm done. My legs are frozen. I can't even move them anymore. And you run the risk of really injuring somebody with hypothermia, so we pull them right out. Shoot around that missing mercy. It's the way it goes. Movie making is not easy.
And I think one of the things that we did that started, we've done a lot, we do it all the time. We're on set, we get all the makeup people around, and you just, you start shooting the shit, waiting for them to set up the next shot, everyone's got the chairs. So when they would rehearse, I don't know if you remember this, we used to name the zombie walks. Like one guy would be Frankenstein, and there'd be another guy who would drag his feet, he was like ice skater. And then there was one guy we called Get the Hell Out of My Yard because he was very aggressive. So we used to sit there and name the joint of that. We were on the side street in downtown.
Yep.
And that was how, because George said to me, which I remember now, you can never demonstrate a zombie walk for a crowd of people. Because if you do, they'll all do the same thing. So you can never show a zombie what to do. So every one of them, you'd be like, okay, you're a zombie, go from here to there. And then they would do it, and then you'd see the ones that your eye goes to, and we'd have to go out. Did a Walking Dead for 15 years. Dude, you stop dragging your feet. You look like Frankenstein. You got it. So every take, George never gave any of the zombies direction. He would look to us. He looked at me, and then I would look to these guys because they were all watching. But I remember him saying, like, the one thing that he said, I never gave the zombies direction. Because if you give one person direction, all 50 people are going to do the exact same thing. They all have to.
We'll answer your question. You mentioned about good times. This goes back to Eugene. I did his makeup for the show, and we got into a rhythm after a while. I remember you would come in. He's a bigger man. I would lay down in the chair, and Eugene could just sleep through the whole thing. And I think we just put on some mellow music, and it was like your best 2 hours of the day. He would just chill. I would only wake him up when I had to paint the back of his head.
Best 2 hours ever. I should have bought that chair. Sleeping like right.
And I remember he'd always get up. I'd whisper, Eugene, you got to do the back of your head. He'd kind of lean up, still a little sleepy. I'd paint the back of his head, do his hands, and then I just kind of soft voice, okay, you're done. And he would just.
Well, you should record that on his phone. You should just use the soothing voice. Eugene, would you paint the back of your head? It'll just be like that. There you go.
Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Sean, you're upstairs. Upstairs is the handsome actors. Downstairs is the more handsome makeup effects guys. In the back corner, come to our tables. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So that was the Land of the Dead cast reunion. George A. Romero Foundation, GARF is coming up next. I'll get a little bit of that, and then I'm gonna go. I gotta make a couple phone calls, use the restroom. So hang out here for a bit. If you guys watched my streams from here last year, they have a better acoustics configuration now. The audio system is definitely better. It's not great, too much reverb, but better than it was, and less feedback, squealing and stuff. So they are improving. Sadly, since this might be the last thing here, they got it right on the last one. Yeah. The mall may be gone by the end of this year. Who knows? Here's the GARF guys. I don't know if Christian Stavrakis is coming up here either. He's a big part of the GARF. He's the one that sculpted the bust of George Romero on the right there. There is Christian. Coming up on the stage. Just had his birthday yesterday.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming to learn about the George A. Romero Foundation. My name is Jeff Whitehead, and I am the Chief of Operations for the Foundation. I'm joined with all of my friends who are here working with us today as well as throughout the weekend. I want to start by telling you a little bit about the Foundation, about what we do, some of our key projects, and then we'll go around the board a little bit to learn a little bit more about what we've got going on with our studies, with the archive, with some of the special projects we've been working on over the last couple of years. And then if you guys have any questions, you're welcome to fire them our way at the end. The first thing I want to talk about is what we are and what we do. So as a foundation, we're a 501c3. All of the proceeds from this particular festival go towards our scholarship, mentorship, and training programs, including hosting a student in our archive, which is my fellow partner in crime here, Ben, from the archive. We host a student in the archive every year. So part of what we're doing right now is raising funds.
That's where he is.
Scholarships. We also, this year, have been very, very happy, and I want to give a quick shout out to Ryan Carr, who is very sad to not be with us this time, but he'll be with us in the future. Over the last couple of years, Ryan and I have been adapting the amusement park, which is one of the seldom seen George films. So we now finally have had that be able to come out for a store take those now. We're really happy to partner with John and Sandy and company. They did a beautiful job. Ryan's art, of course, is fantastic, and we hope that you come and enjoy it, that you pick up a copy throughout the weekend, as it was a long time coming, particularly for Ryan, who meticulously tried to capture the ethos of what George was doing when he was shooting in Westview Park, which is not too far from here. We're going to do a lot of events around town. There's going to be events in New York and Los Angeles. So, as I mentioned, I carry the George Merrill Archive at St. Vincent's Library System. So, if you haven't heard about it, it's a collection that shows the entire creative history, as drafts, material, production history, everything from how it began to make this. We see the final version, we hear maybe extra commentary about the writer, or whatnot. This relation is emphasized in there. So, same people from academic research, articles, experts, students do this. But as an example of the types of things you can find since dead here, previous to this, the first version of it was it was right in August of 2000. And it goes on the army, like Daddy and his crew went out there.
Was that what was Dead Reckoning?
Yes, it's called Death Reckoning. So there's no focus on like one characters and zombie army. We have a thing kind of happening similar to that day. There's no experimentation of zombies happening in the basement.
Not one sort of stealth zombie escape that nobody noticed and wandering up to the penthouse.
Right. So the zombie gets around, zombies invade the rest of the place out. And in the end, we get our stealth zombie stows away on the helicopter. Takes the fly off of the sunset, turns around and crashes into the building, and slowly take the building. So this is August of 01. This movie does not get made. It is now ever filmed. There's no notes in the studio about that. I would say a lot of other things.
Yeah, about an hour.
Needs to be more of a source of conflict.
That's what I did. This one too.
I also have a fantastic movie in which Riley is having a dream and this beautiful woman climbs on top of the bed and she takes off her shirt and she's a zombie and attacks them and makes them sleep there. And the studio like never fully it. They understood what that word was. It was Nightmare. Fantastic. But this is the kind of things like for me and from the archive. See what are these stories look like, how they change. Sometimes we know there's studio feedback and so we can't read this. Sometimes the world events have made this certain films change. It always tells us something that we didn't know about this work. And can continue to kind of re-examine how we think about George. How can we come and see these materials? So the archive is open to anybody. It does require you to make an appointment. So if you go to library.lit.edu, you can get in touch with us there to make an appointment. You can come in, it's not museum, so you don't walk through and just get to see materials on display. But you sit in what we call radiant room, which is where you can select the type of materials. You're going to talk about massive material you would like to see, and then you're going to be able to read through the strips, see the other material. So it's open to everybody, so just reach out to us at the library and see what's going on.
We talked a lot about George when we do these panels, but you have other things too now.
Yes, so this was part of a bigger initiative that led to some of our studies we'll continue to talk about. And so since we had the Merrill Archive in 2019, we spent 6 years continuing to grow the archive for more studies more broadly. We have graphic papers from different writers. Dan Krause is one of them. You might know his name from adapting St. George's online novels. Most recently, we just announced we have the archive for the Blair Witch Project. So again, we'll be able to see the creative history of that film. Recently got a first edition of Dracula. So we have a mixture of rare books as well as archives. And again, all this is there to provide a history of the creative process of making the genre, to recognize we actually think it should be studied, and to provide inspiration to students and writers and filmmakers to know history, and to explain these possibly can. So we've got the out from Maryland, this sort of students with the foundation.
And we've already had some projects in terms of articles and books about talk a little bit about what we've been able to produce so far.
So Dan Krause, of course, is one example. So Money Dead, last 2024, made a bigger
So we're similar, again, just different things, you know?
we found in the archive and then finished them all. We had Dr. Matt Hart, who's a full-size scholar. The first book that really delved into the archive. And he had George from the perspective of what new material can be drawing in the
professor of film studies, which I am at the University of Pittsburgh. And I do have a book that came out recently called Horror, Film, and Otherness. You can find some copies at the Romero Foundation table. I'd be happy to hang out with you there and talk with you more about it. But basically, my interest in horror goes back a long way, and I actually screamed Night of the Living Dead at my bar mitzvah party when I was 13, so I was already working on the scholarship that I do today, back then. I find George's films, like I'm sure you all do, to be especially meaningful and important because they make us think as well as they make us feel. And George had a lot to say about society and culture and history, and George's films really made what is now the field of horror studies possible. I teach in a field called horror studies, and I'm very proud to be able to say that, and I don't think I could say it without the work that George did, including the work of the foundation done by all of you up here. George always wanted us to stay scared. That's what he would always say. And I've come to understand that that phrase as stay curious, stay studious, stay awake, stay engaged. And horror studies really aims to get us all thinking about all the things that we love to read and watch and talk about. And there's a lot to learn from horror. And I'm proud to say that on the strength of the work of the Romero Foundation and the Horror Studies Archive at Pitt, next year we will be the nation's first horror studies center at the University of Pittsburgh. And there'll be more news about that as it takes shape. But certainly something that we all want this center to do is to be a place where you all have a voice and where you get to tell us, well, this is what I would want from a horror studies center. This is the kinds of things that I would want to see and be a part of and participate in and look at in terms of events and programming and guest speakers and lectures and screenings. All this stuff is stuff we're planning to do at the Horror Studies Center. So please let us know what you would like from a Horror Studies Center, and I'm going to work as hard as I can with my colleagues here to deliver that to you. So thank you so much, and happy to be working with such a great team up here.
So Adam, this public event's been part of the idea behind the Horror Studies Center to take the work of the archive and take the work of the academics and push it a bit further.
It was like each person out there was just like rubbing my arm and he's like, would you like to sub? I'm not making sub.
And is great about the public, right?
Absolutely. I mean, a Horror Studies Center really has to prove itself. I mean, you all are the converted. You believe in horror studies, I'm hoping. But for a lot of our colleagues and students, it'll be our job to convince them that there's something to be learned from horror. And one of the ways that we plan to do that is to be bringing top speakers and artists in to Pittsburgh to lot of collaborators already in horror studies. And one of our collaborators happens to be a psychiatrist who works on research with patients who are at risk for suicide. And he actually works on virtual reality simulations that help these patients not do that. And so the kinds of simulations he's interested in creating have a lot to do with horror because they have to be scary and they have to be graphic and they have to convince someone who's considering this very serious thing to not go down that path. And so horror has applications in fields that are not just literature or film studies, the places you sort of imagine it would exist, but it has all kinds of applications everywhere. And I know Gino can talk a bit about its applications in the fields of social work and disability studies and the sort of worlds of filmmaking.
Are these guys hairdressers?
There's lots of ways to think about horror in all kinds of fields, and we want the Horror Studies Center to be as universal as possible in what counts as horror.
So we'll move now because we know, as we know, that George Romero is more than just something that happens.
So I'm going to try to ape it. She's the night of the living
Less to have volunteers all over the world join us in this pursuit. We have one of us now. We love it. Our correspondent from the UK. Tell us a little bit about what you've got going on in the UK right now.
Thank you, Jeff. Very good introduction there for the captain that I've earned. I'll certainly take it on. We've got some good exciting stuff going on. Just for those that may be slightly unaware, I'll do a very, very quick history lesson, just to not bore you too much. But it was recognised early on, like Jeff alluded to, in the Foundation's history, that there was a really strong fan base beyond the shores of the United States for George's work, particularly in Europe. So through a smaller convention that you guys may be aware of in the UK, the Foundation was able to be hosted over there, and that's really established a bit of a presence. We do have a presence in other European countries, most notably France and Italy, but also far from places like Japan, so the garden is really global. And we do a lot of good stuff. So over the course of the time that we've been established in the UK, we've hosted conventions, we've led to facilitate screenings of George's work, most notably Night of the Living Dead and the amusement park that was doing go out on the festival circuit. That was very well received across the UK in really good ways. We've also been able to host various events and screenings. We've got some screenings coming up in the UK this year. We're going to be doing the UK premiere of Garth Short. My colleague Gino will tell you about when he takes to the mic. And that's going to be a horror festival that we're going to have a good presence at. We're going to be vending there, we're going to be screening movies there, we're going to be publicising that on our social media, so look out for that as the year progresses. We're also doing some collaborations with some really exciting UK horror merchandise creators and horror artists. I recently was out probably the UK's nearly biggest horror convention about 3 weeks ago, which is a great event for us, and we really do get to spread our word around and make a lot of nice contacts. So we've got some apparel coming out soon in the UK that should be quite exciting, and we'll make that available here too. We're going to further develop some projects that we've got going on with regard to screenings of the George's older work, particularly around Halloween. In fact, the very town that I live in, London, does Halloween screenings, and we're looking at maybe having Night of the Living Dead screened at that, and that's generating a lot of excitement, so I'm looking forward to that. In addition to that, we're going to be looking at events in 2026, moving forward, appearing at multiple shows in the UK. We're going to be bringing the amusement park graphic novel to the UK, which we're very excited about. And if you haven't happened to flick through that or pick up a copy, I would head over to the card table after this to have a look at that. That's a great piece of work that Brian, one of our artists, Jeff, talks about as produced. That's really making some good waves, and I'm really looking forward to bringing that to the UK and beyond. So it's a really exciting time for the golf, you know, not just in the US but also throughout the world. And we're looking forward to a great rest of 2025 and a good 2026.
Speaking of the rest of 2025, we understand there's a 10th anniversary festival happening at some point in time. For those of you who are so inclined and want to skip across to one of my favorite cities in the UK, tell us a little about that.
So yes, I don't know if any of you have seen or know of the Greek contingent that's been attending the convention this year. We've been a decent set of numbers this year, which is great to see. And a number of us are flying the flag for a Romero convention called Weekend of the Dead, which is held every November in the UK. It has done for the last 10 years. This year is our big blowout year. It's going to be the last year we can do the show. Beyond that, we're hoping to maybe amalgamate it with some other events so we don't lose the Romero flavour. But this will be a very special year. The foundation will be present at that, of course, celebrating George's work in the UK. We hope to do a couple of screenings like we did last year. So yeah, if you come over to the table, I can give you more information about that. I know we do have some Americans come over to the show. They do love the show and they love the country. There's a whole raft of things to see when you're over there. I know some guys have hit up the Shaun of the Dead location, great fun, members, love those. It's going to be an exciting time, and it's going to be bittersweet because it'll be the last one, but it's going to be a great opportunity to really showcase George's work and spread the word, throughout the UK and really make it a strong 2026.
So for those of you, thanks Noel, for those of you who don't know, the bust of George that you see right there was actually sculpted by the guy at the end right here, Christopher Bracken. So if you're taking pictures with George right there, you're taking pictures for the Christopher. So Chris, you want to tell us a little about the sculpture? You want to tell us about the plans for it?
Yeah. Well, the sculpture.
It was always his birthday yesterday,
That's
so
true. So
happy
yeah,
birthday.
He's 39 again.
29.
Preston, 29 again. All right.
I hope he was 21.
That's my IQ, sorry. The sculpture of George, for years I've been sculpting little third scale models of different zombies. I did but I did Flyboy, and Karen Cooper from Night of the Living Dead. And whenever it was George's birthday, I would go to his house and say, hey, they give one of these little ones. So it was really nice when he was writing Dead Reckoning, he had the $3 lined up as his inspiration to kind of. But I had never done a full-size, life-size, full-scale sculpture, let alone a bronze. I've never done anything like that, just a guy sculpting monsters, But I found out that the 40th anniversary event was happening here at the mall. That's right after my birthday. But I said, I'm going to sculpt George because there should be a statue of him somewhere. I can't name a bridge after him yet, but I called the mall and I said, would that be something you would be interested in doing? And fortunately, because for years the mall was strictly conference. It was like if you took a picture, they threw you out, trying to rob the place. But as the mall culture has changed, and they have now done this ironic, they call the dead malls zombie malls, right? The mall itself is a zombie. But they said, sure, anything that would bring people to the mall, absolutely. I said, great. So they built a little pedestal for it. I went to a foundry in Chester, PA, which is down near Delaware. They cast the bronze cast, beautiful. And they said, what kind of patina would you like? And they wanted a George. I said, bright red? No. I just picked the traditional green stuff. And then I took a flamethrower and fired it. But then I drove here, we put it there. We had the first meeting that we did here. But it was the 40th anniversary of Dawn, so there's a big cast gathering and it's installed up there. The rest is history. I sculpted a third scale version of him for the fundraiser. And then a lot of people have seen him on Instagram and Facebook. And there's a 3D printing shop down there called Fab Labs. And Kevin made an arrangement with them to reproduce that bust in like a quarter scale, anything like this. got it with the packaging. It was not to Kevin's specifications. It didn't come out as well as I thought. He said, I'm not going to sell it yet. So, great, now there's 3,000 people asking me where to get it. Anyway, they are ready and they will be available very soon. But yeah, we're engaging now with Bill Cornell, Chili Billy. I'm not sure where that is going to be displayed yet. But Gino said Sharon, PA, that's great stuff. Yeah, Gino lives there.
For those of you who don't know, so too was Bill Cornell from Sharon, and we'll hear a little bit more about him in a minute. So Chris is our resident historian as well, and some of you have come by now booth to ask all sorts of incredible questions. Chris is like a George Romero encyclopedia.
George said that the commentary from Knight Riders is just Chris is an encyclopedic knowledge of my films, and I realized that I should write that down somewhere. George himself said it.
So he's our historian, which means if you have questions about George, about his films, that's the guy. Come on up, visit our table in lobby, which is right there. And then we'll, we have it in interesting questions, two of which stumped me yesterday, so I have to relay them to him today. Right to my left is someone who was sitting in one of your chairs not but a few Living Dead weekends ago. Came up to our booth, like many of you do, and said, hey, I've got this interesting idea. And I thought it was really cool. And you heard Adam talk a little bit about work with disability services. You talked a little bit about Sharon, PA. This is the embodiment of all of those things. And we're really happy at one point to get to know Gino and welcome him into the foundation as a volunteer, but also to help him recognize a dream of doing a truly disability-friendly film. We call it Stay. So it's just come out. Gino, do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. Well, Stay it's not been officially released. We did our first screening at the Salem Horror Fest. Did a year on the festival circuit. We won some awards. We won an award down in Marietta, Georgia at the Renegade Film Festival. We've been recognized and a few others. We just got picked up for licensing on Film Hub. So I'm kind of sitting back and waiting to see what happens with that. But just to put Stay in a nutshell, like Jeff said, I was sitting like right over here where the podium is and standing, and I was with my son, and the foundation did their presentation about how they're looking for a story that kind of gives a voice to underrepresented populations. And I looked at my son and I was like, I got to get this script to them. Because for 18 years, before I made the transition to filmmaking, for 18 years I worked with individuals with special needs on all levels, physical and mental disability. And so I wrote this script, and you got to kind of stay with me on this, because I'm very heavily influenced by David Lynch. But I wrote it based on feelings and emotions, and it was what I was kind of getting working with these individuals, and then I threw in some addiction issue and some dreamlike stuff, and so I brought the script to Jeff, and Jeff's like, yes. After he read it, did some researching, and he goes, this is really good, we got to work on this, and we work on that, so we crafted it, and we got the financing, and I got to cut to the chase on this one. The one character, when I wrote it, I had Lori Cardinale pictured in this role, but I'm like, never in a million years am I going to get Lori. Well, one of the blessings of volunteering with the George Romero Foundation is unlocking these doors. And so when we cast the film and the script was in their hands, not only did we get Lori, but we got Suze Romero. So my film has Suze Romero, Lori Cardinale, and it has a young actress named Ashley Spears who has Williams syndrome, and she's phenomenal in the film. There's another actor, his name is Logan Register. He has osteogenesis imperfecta. It's about, we kid around, it's about 2 foot tall. And he got these little tiny hands, and we adapted the whole makeup process, did all of the special effect makeup for the movie, and starred in the movie. So, and we also had individuals behind the camera that had diagnosed disabilities. So when people say they're doing inclusive films, it's not just like, you know, we're gonna stick an actor in the background. Like we stayed true to it. And it'll be out soon. I don't want to give too much of the plot away.
George, our resident filmmaker, he's a fantastic one at that.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
You pay me later.
Congratulations, Gina.
And so, Gina, we talked a little bit about things we've done, but there is a project that we're working on right now, which I think will be interesting for all of you. It's a little ways off, but let's talk about your next exciting endeavor, something that we want to do together next, which I think will appeal to this audience.
I'm just going to say, I'm going to ask you something. Who here remembers Chili Billy? All right, okay. So I'm from Sharon, Pennsylvania. I graduated from Hickory, but we're right next door to Sharon. I live in Sharon. I've lived in Sharon for 20 years. And like Chris said, there should be a statue of Bill Cardell in Sharon, Pennsylvania. So I'm not going to go down the road. So what can I do about it? I can tell Bill's story. So I talked to Lori. Lori says, "Yeah, man, if you want to do it, let's do it. Let's see what you can do." So I do have a treatment written. The treatment has been passed around with a few people, and I'm looking to do a based on, not a documentary, not a boring talking head, but I made a trip to the Hillman Archives down on Pitt's campus, and Ben brought out the cart. I gotta tell you the story. He brings out this cart, and it's all of these archive materials from Bill Cardell. And so I'm digging through the archive stuff, and I'm like pulling this, and I'm writing notes, and I'm writing notes. And I looked up, and I can see Ben's at his desk, and I can see the cart full of material. And it just like, it was like an energy hit me. It was like, you know something? That cart was created by a guy who graduated from Sharon. You live in Sharon. Do you see what's possible? And it's like, I'm not putting myself out there like that, but it's like, my God, I connect the dots on that. You know, I live in Sharon. Bill Cardell graduated from Sharon. Now, I'm reading his college term papers in his high school notebook in the Hillman Archive. If that's not impressive, then I don't know what else is. You know, and the fact that the Hillman exists, and they're like Ben said, there's Wes Craven and George Romero and John Carpenter, and I mean, these materials are priceless, absolutely priceless. And if you're a writer, a filmmaker, a film historian, a human being that is interested in knowing how artists interpret human emotions, get to the Hillman, talk to them. It's priceless.
One of the best things about going to the archive, because George was not under restraints from the studio for a long time. He was independent. And so when you could read his stories, it was strictly what he was coming up. There was no interference. We can't afford that many zombies, or I don't want this vampire. He wrote what he wanted to write. So you can see his creative process from beginning to end. And it's incredible. Like the early draft of Dawn of the Dead, they had like a psychic controlling the zombies. And you know, but these are ideas that you branch out, you can reel it back in and find the one that really hits you, and that's where you go. And you can follow George's process. It's amazing. It's stuff we had no idea that he was thinking, creating in his head. It's amazing stories to be told there if you go to the archive and read all that.
All right, gang, thanks so much. If you have any questions, feel free to fire them at us now. If not, come and visit us at Hall B. Pick up a copy of the amusement park, ask us all those questions. Remember, it's time to stump Chris. That's the mission for today. And so we'll take some questions now if we have them. There's a mic right there if you want to run to. And if not, yeah, go ahead.
You sculpted this us. Have you worked on any movies? I worked on a bunch of movies, not as a sculptor, a few as a sculptor. I went to high school with a guy named Eduardo Sanchez, one of the directors of the Blair Witch Project. So I did some work for X and Films after that. He'll throw me a bone every now and Craig with the voiceover, so I was writing it, I was thinking of the newscaster letting me there so to get the real guy to read. That was amazing. Nick Tower was along with us.
Up until recently, War Remains was available on Amazon in the UK, so maybe we'll check it out. Could be available here.
It's, if you weren't just made a deal, it's available on Tubi and Hulu and everywhere else, so enjoy, and it's 90 minutes long, you don't watch the credits, so you won't have wasted that much of your life.
You're a film scientist or is that professor? Professor, yes. So there's a lot of like countdowns to like the scariest movie in the world, and a lot of times it comes up to be on The Exorcist. Like, what is it about The Exorcist that you think makes it like the scariest movie ever made? And what is your opinion of like the scariest movie ever made? Because to me, I feel like Candyman is like the scariest movie I've ever seen. Like, what would you say?
Yeah, this is a very difficult question, and one that I get asked often in my line of work. You know, what's the scariest movie ever made, and is there a kind of is there a scientific equation that we can come to find out what's actually the scariest? And I think it's actually a very hopeful thing that there is no equation, there is no secret,
No scare scale.
there's no scare scale. I think one of the things that we probably can all share about horror is it's so idiosyncratic. You know, each of us can watch a film at a certain time, at a certain age, in a certain situation that will scare us to death and haunt us for life. And you might show it to your best friend, and they'll say, "This is garbage. You know, I don't know why you're subjecting me to this. This has
I have to add to that question, though, as a Jew, The Exorcist hits you now. It's Greek Orthodox, I don't find it scary. Everybody who is Catholic is terrified of The Exorcist.
Well, I am working on a book about the Jewish horror film right now, and my personal take, and it's biased, of course, is that one of the reasons The Exorcist is so scary is that it's directed by the Jew, and that its take on the Catholic Church and all things sort of scary connected to Catholicism, of course, comes from deep research from William Peter Black. He was a real believer and a real Catholic, and you know, deep in that. But it also comes from the sort of skeptical point of view of a Jewish director, William Friedkin, who was coming to this project with a very different set of parameters and ideas. And I think the combination of those things might be part of what makes The Exorcist so scary. I think it's the convergence of a lot of different fears and points of view, and of course, as we know, amazing set pieces. But to me, the movie that scares me the most on repeated viewings, and I've seen it many times and taught it many times, is the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's my answer. I would love to hear everyone else's
It's
answer.
the same year as The Exorcist, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Just to add to that, I actually just finished Exorcist. I wanted to read it, given the reputation that you've read for the show, that it scares me. I mean, it did scare me, and I'm a non-fantasy Catholic, I guess. But one thing I think that might make it scary is that throughout the book, certainly, I think a lot of struggle for the film, they tried to pursue every single scientific, medical reasoning as to why, you know, the girl is behaving and acting like the way she is, and it exhausts them. You know, they go down the psychiatric route, they go down various kind of medical routes, and they don't seem to solve the problem. So I think, as a human being thinking about that there's an opportunity for you to be injured or harmed or taken over by a being, and medical science cannot deal with that. You have to go to the religion to try to actually deal with it. It's probably quite scary for some people.
Just to piggyback real quick on Adam's book, Horror and the Otherness, from my point of view, like I said, the 18 years of my backstory, the people that were influencing me, that continue to influence me, the otherness to them are literally other human beings. Because you got to stop and think, if you're a non-verbal human being and somebody's causing you harm, you really have no way to speak out. So your definition of horror is different from somebody who can speak out. If you're confined to a wheelchair and you're being exposed to certain elements and you're unable to escape those elements, then your horror is going to be different than other people's horror. So I mean, to tie it in with George, look at what he did with Monkey Shots. He took the lead character, he put him in a wheelchair, and now all of a sudden this man who was this physical specimen of perfection is now terrified of a little monkey. So the idea of horror and the otherness is, I think, is what's so amazing.
Adam's book is worth every penny.
Yes. Yeah. So horror, I think it's different individually, and that's what's so beautiful about it.
See how you didn't know it, but you're getting exposed to horror studies anyway right now?
You don't want us exposing horror studies.
We've just taken horror 101.
Thank you.
Good stuff. I gotta go, guys. Gotta do some errands. I'll stream some more later.